Hi everyone and welcome back. Today I'll review a couple of high-end vacuum tubes, more exactly a pair of PSVANE Summit 6SN7 driver tubes and also a pair of direct heated triodes used as power tubes, 300Bs. Now I have lots, and I mean lots of 6SN7 tubes, from new old stock to new production tubes that I've been collecting over the years. And it would be fun comparing what I have on hand with these, and the same goes with the 300B. Now, these are not your off-the-shelf, your regular current production affordable tubes, but Summit level tubes, hence the name and also the price tag. A pair of matched 6SN7 goes for $379 and a pair of 300Bs goes for $759, placing them up there with some of the costlier current production tubes. After seeing the thick cardboard packaging and the absurd amounts of foam and individual serial numbers for each vacuum tube, including detailed measurements for filament current and plate current, I realized that these aren't your regular JJs or electro-harmonic tubes, which you can get for around $20 a pop. PSVANE informed me that only 2 to 3% of the very best tubes produced that exhibit superior electrical performance are selected to be a Summit vacuum tube, hence the name and again the price tag. As for the tubes themselves, these are hand-selected and also hand-matched, promising optimal performance for your amplifiers, preamplifiers and DACs. And if you need 2 or 4 of them, then PSVANE offers them in matched pairs or matched quads, and they aren't charging an extra for the matching service as many vacuum tubes sellers are doing nowadays. Having tried all sorts of 6SN7 and 300B tubes, it's surprising to see once again a completely new shape and a completely new design. These are right now the widest 6SN7 tubes I've seen thus far, and the same goes for the 300B tubes that look ever so slightly fatter than the Stradi S300B and much bigger compared to a pair of Western Electric 300B. Overall, the build quality seems fantastic. We again have this metallic base, also gold-plated pins for better conductivity, and of course this HPC coating that PSVANE has been using for a while now. I've used the Summit 6SN7 with 2 amplifiers. First of all, with the Cain Soul 170HA integrated amplifier / headphone amplifier, and later on with the Felix Audio Envy Susvara edition, which is currently my high-end listening companion via headphones. And later on I'll try the 300B with the Felix Envy Susvara edition, which is a very special amplifier because it uses amorphous core transformers, and that one is actually one of the most detailed and transparent sounding tube amplifiers, so I believe is the perfect candidate for tube comparisons and listening impressions, since any change in the acoustic chain can be easily heard. As you might expect, people are rolling vacuum tubes not for the visual appeal, for the gold pins, for the HPC coating, but mostly for a better sound quality. And right now we have many tube manufacturers, from entry-level ones like JJ, Electro-Harmonics, to Summit-level manufacturers that are making some super exotic and expensive vacuum tubes. Going back to the PSVANE Summit vacuum tubes, and after trying them for more than a month, I do not recommend you drawing conclusions until you have on them at least 50 hours. I remember just installing them, and 1 hour later I started listening to music, and I didn't like what I heard because the bass was nowhere to be found, the mid-range was playing a hide-and-seek game, it was quite dry, and also the treble was piercing my eardrums with lots of sharpness. Only 10 hours passed and their tonality shifted quite a lot, so the mid-range was now blooming, much nicer, I could feel it much closer to me, so it was a little bit forward sounding. The bass was finally quite playful, and listening fatigue and treble sharpness was nowhere to be found, and that was just 10 hours of burning. After 50 hours later, I had another listen and I was surprised by a very different sound, and it seems that my favorite current production tubes The Ray Tube's reserve was slightly outperformed in the mid-range region and marginally when it came to layering and depth. Okay guys, now let's do some important comparisons so you'll understand how the Summit series compare with new old stock vacuum tubes, with new production vacuum tubes. And let's start with the most basic one. So this is the JJ6SN7 that you can get for $25 per one single unit or $50 per pair. This is usually the stock tube that you can get with plenty of entry to mid-level amplifiers. I believe it has a decent tonality, so it's not going to the bright or to the dark side. It's not the most resolving sounding tube, actually it's quite bloated, so it's not very resolving. And I also don't like its build quality, it's just so-so. We have a plastic base. The glass also doesn't seem to be straight, it's leaning to one side, and also these pins are not gold plated. So this is okay, but nothing truly special, especially if you don't compare these to anything else, they seem just okay. Moving on to the Ray Tube's Select 6SN7, so these will cost you around $170 per pair. Right off the bat, you can see that the build quality is just much nicer. We have the HPC coating, we have the gold pins, we have straight glass, and overall it's a much cleaner and higher quality build. The sound is also considerably better, and right off the bat you can feel that the sound is no longer as compressed and dynamics are just going much wilder. So the bass hits harder, the mid-range has more emotion, and the treble has less listening fatigue, less sharpness, and it's more detailed at the same time. So this is actually quite a big step up in terms of performance, but we're just getting warmed up. The next in line is the PSVANE CV181T2. So these are selling for around 200 euros or 200 US dollars, and I believe that finally we have a much nicer build quality. We have the metal base, we have lots of HPC coating, gold pins, and overall these are coming standard with some high-end and uber high-end amplifiers. So you can see them in, for example, in the Felix NV Performance Edition. These are very good tubes. They're also coming with the Susvara edition. So this is not super expensive vacuum tube, but it's a very good sounding tube, I believe. This is also quite neutral, which I like very much. So it's not going to the bright side, it's not going to the dark side. I like that these are very transparent and they are boosting detailed retrieval on the micro level. So finally with this tube you can hear some additional nuances that were not present on the JJ or on the Ray Select vacuum tube. So these also sound a little bit wider and deeper, and finally you can start hearing additional layers of sound, like the depth is improving with this tube. Not only the soundstage, but I believe the holography effects, the 3D effects are somehow more impressive with this one. They have the right price, they are nicely built, and the sound emphasizes inner resolution more than anything else. Moving on to the Ray Tube's Reserve, as you can see they look pretty much identical with the PSVANE CV181. Absolutely identical, the same coating. The only difference is that the metal base is now silver painted as opposed to this orange gold plated, but I do believe they are made in the same factory, just guessing right now because they look pretty much identical. Surprisingly, these sound better, but these are also considerably more expensive, 500 US dollars or around 450, 500 euros, I'm not really sure. So these are more than double the price of the CV181. The improvement is not as huge as it was the case going from the JJ to Select and then to the CV181. But what I like about this is that finally I can say that these are slowly but surely start to mimic the sound of new old stock vacuum tubes. So there is a little bit of sweetness in here that is not present here. So this is a very neutral tube. This is a little bit sweeter sounding in the mid-range. The bass is faster, it hits harder. The soundstage effects are also more impressive on the Reserve. And overall, I'd say that tonality is ever so slightly shifting towards the warm side, which I like quite a lot with the Reserve. And for about 1 year, I believe, so these were my flagship vacuum tubes that I've been using in the Cayenne Soul and also in the Felix NV Performance and later on Susvara edition. These are impressive and these are my favorite current production tubes until I got to listen to the Summit series by PSVANE. The PSVANE Summit 6SN7 are slightly cheaper compared to the Ray Tubes Reserve, going for 379 compared to 500 on these, yet the sound is actually very similar between these two tubes, and in some conditions you might like the sound of the Summit a little bit more. So these are boosting the inner tones of the vocals and also of acoustical instruments a little bit more compared to the Ray Tubes Reserve. And in this regard, they mimic even more the sound of new old stock vacuum tubes like what I have on hand, like Sylvania, Raytheon and Kenrad. So they are sounding even more magical in the mid-range region, which I like quite a lot. The mid-range in particular is ever so slightly thicker and is slightly bolder sounding compared to any other current production vacuum tubes. These are very close, but everything else is actually pretty far away, like the PSVANE CV181, like Ray Tubes Select, like the J&J's, Electro Harmonics. Those have nothing to do with the mid-range bloom, with sweetness. These, however, are pretty impressive in this regard, and I believe they remind me the most about the Sylvania Bad Boy 6SN7, which I also have on hand and love very, very much. So these cost pretty much the same with the PSVANE. Sometimes you can find them even cheaper, like $200 US, but being new old stock, the price is never really set in stone. You can get them for the cheap or very, very expensive. These are very impressive in the soundstage department and also mid-range. Everything else is just okay. They also sound quite transparent and detailed for a new old stock tube, but these are definitely outplaying them in terms of detail retrieval and also transparency. What these tubes does absolutely fantastic and the new old stock are not doing so great is actually the noise floor, because the noise floor, you cannot hear it on the Summit series and also on the Ray Tubes Reserve, but you can definitely hear a slight hum and buzz with the Raytheons, with the Sylvania, with the Kenrad, something that is simply dead silent with the PSVANE and also with the Ray Tubes Reserve. The Summit together with the Ray Tubes Reserve have the lowest noise floor, so I can easily focus on things happening in the background, and sometimes I even think that, you know, this is not a vacuum tube amplifier because I cannot hear any kind of buzz or distortion or noise. Sometimes they sound as clear, even clearer compared to solid-state amplifiers. It sounds crazy, but that is how high-performance current production tubes sound. Except for having a more neutral tone on the Ray Tubes Reserve and a slightly sweeter and warmer tonality on the PSVANE Summit, I also observed that they also sound a little different in terms of soundstage and depth and layering. So this is deeper sounding and you can hear additional layers of sound, like there is a nicer decompression in between the notes, but these are sounding a little bit more distant, like the sound travels longer distances until it reaches my ears. So it feels like the soundstage is a little bit wider on the Ray Tubes and the sound is deeper on the PSVANE. So which one you prefer is up to you to decide. As much as I would like to compare the old Raytheons with the new PSVANE Summit, I believe there is nothing to compare in here. The noise floor is pretty high on the Raytheons, resolution not so impressive. The only thing that I like about the Raytheons is actually the bass region, which is quantity-wise quite impressive, but quality-wise not so much. In here we have much tighter, faster, more resolving type of bass, and also the mid-range is blooming with lots of intricacies, something that right here I simply cannot hear. And also the soundstage, I believe there is no comparison. The soundstage is exactly the size of the tube, much bigger sounding here and much closed in on the ratios. I have a similar story to tell you regarding the PSVANE Summit 300Bs. The full music 300B that I've got with the Felix Envy Performance Edition felt like a small upgrade compared to the stock 300B tubes that you usually get with your entry-level, maybe mid-level amplifiers. But once you start playing with some much more Summit level, much more exotic 300B tubes like the Summit, like the Stradi, like the Western Electric or the Eldrogs, then the change is actually quite substantial. I'd say it's almost unrecognizable how much better the sound can get with better 300B tubes. I no longer have the Western Electric 300B with me, which cost $1.5 grand for a pair, so those are quite exotic tubes. But even right now, I can say that those offer you one of the lushest mid-range and definitely the sweetest mid-range as well. I believe those are also the smoothest sounding current production 300Bs that you can buy right now. But at the same time, those are not so detailed. The micro level information is not that impressive. And also they do not offer you the grandest scale or the nicest depth. I believe they are just so-so in this regard. The Summit, much better in the soundstage, resolution is considerably better as well. The sound is tighter, the bass in particular is faster, hits harder. The mid-range, not so sweet, but definitely there is a little bit of sweetness in there as well. But it's clearer and there is a longer trail of the notes, which I also like quite a lot. The treble is I'd say a little bit rolled off on the Western Electric, but here that is not happening, although I cannot say that I'm hearing any kind of listening fatigue or sharpness. That is not happening with the PSVANE. When discussing sound tightness, inner detail and resolution, I believe that this is where the PSVANE Summit and also the Stradi 300Bs will be quite impressive, and it's really hard differentiating these two because these are more alike than different. And it almost feels like comparing the Summit 6SN7 with that Ray Tubes Reserve. Very similar in this regard. This will cost you $1,000 per pair. I also like the build quality of these tubes. They look absolutely fantastic. Slightly taller, but not as fast. Overall, the build quality is really top-notch. I have nothing to complain. After comparing for hours the Summit together with the Stradi S300B, I came to a conclusion that if you don't want to spend a small fortune on a pair of Eldrog TM300B, which will cost you, I believe, $4,000 per pair, then I believe both the Stradi and the PSVANE Summit will deliver tons of information to the listener on the micro and macro scale. What's more important is that the added resolution is not bringing any kind of listening fatigue and the sound is not becoming razor sharp. I could still listen to aggressive rock or metal without lowering the volume. The only difference I could hear between the Stradi and the PSVANE is that the Stradi is ever so slightly sharper and clearer, while the Summit is by a hair more relaxed sounding, and I can listen to a wider selection of musical genres, and even a wider selection of headphones will work with the Summit PSVANE. And once you combine the Summit 300B with the 6SN7 in the same amplifier, then I believe that notions like resolution, transparency, speed, decay, or technicalities in a single word will matter less to you, because dynamic range will feel almost limitless and you can forget about dynamic compression that stock tubes usually have. The sound becomes effortless, easygoing and even quite holographic as you slowly start hearing the layers and the sub-layers of music, adding depth to the whole experience and lots of air in between the notes. The sound is no longer about technicalities, but more about the music you are listening to. Okay everyone, now let's draw some conclusions. At the very start of this video, you might get the impression that these are quite expensive and these might not worth their asking price. But once I started comparing them with plenty of new old stock and current production vacuum tubes, even some more expensive tubes, it was clear to me that they can easily play at a similar level and even outplay their competition at double the price. Personally, I wouldn't use these in entry-level amplifiers. Sure, they will make a difference, but not a substantial difference. They will, however, make a substantial difference in mid-level or high-end amplifiers that use better components. For example, they made quite a substantial difference in the Cain Sol 170HA, but not such a huge difference like they did on the Felix Envy Susvara edition that uses better transformers, better wiring, and just overall better internal components. Right now, I think that their price was fully justified, and remember that you can get a quad matched pair of 300B for a little over $1.5 grand, which I believe is an outstanding value. You can buy them directly from PSVANE or from Amazon store. I will leave a link below so you can check that out. Alright everyone, thank you for watching. Please smash that like button and consider subscribing if you found the video helpful. And I'll see you very soon with lots of new content that I've been cooking for a while now. See you soon. Cheers.